Hello everyone, welcome back to another one of these collection videos where I take a look at one of my completed collections where I have everything I want for a particular movie, TV show, whatever. Today, as you can see, we're looking at Columbo, which I consider to be one of the greatest, if not the greatest, detective series ever to grace a television screen. Peter Falk is incredible as Colombo. He has won many awards for his portrayal as the character over the years for a good reason. It is remarkable. I think not just the titular role in his career, but one of the greatest portrayals of a TV detective with such incredible layered nuance to a character, great comedic timing, and just a brilliant creative vision with how to portray a detective in a very different form than what really came before it, and honestly ever since, partially based on the format of the show, which is the inverted murder mystery, very different from the whodunit, which is the more typical style that is popularized by fiction in murder mystery books of the 20s and 30s and 40s and movies from that time forward, Agatha Christie, that kind of stuff. This is very different to where you actually see the murder take place up front. In fact, Colombo usually doesn't appear until 15, 20, sometimes over half an hour into an episode. The entire first act, at least, is from the perspective of the murderer. So you already, as an audience, it's not a trying to figure out and piece the clues and see if you can figure it out before the detective. You actually know how the murder was committed. You watched it, and you know who did it and why. And that's part of what makes this so fascinating and why it really works. And each episode, as I explained, sometimes Columbo could show up almost half an hour in or more sometimes. It's because each one of these episodes is movie length. They were for TV movies, a weekly movie series. It actually started off as a one-off prescription murder, and then a second pilot was eventually put together, Ransom for a Dead Man, which then continued the initial series in the 1970s, which was 7 seasons before being revived later on in the 80s and continued for a very long time. But I think most Columbo fans will agree that it's really that first run of the series that is the core of what is great about Columbo. And the character of Columbo is brilliantly portrayed in a manner befitting the structure of the story, to where you are understanding the murderer, I think, to a deeper degree than most other television shows of its type, because you are seeing the murder take place from their perspective. You're understanding their motivations very deeply going into it. So the entire episode, you are watching Columbo unravel this mystery, and you are feeling the tension of the murderer as Columbo finds clues, closes in on them, and figures things out, because you know when he stumbles upon something that it's important, or you understand when Columbo, maybe for half a second, misses something, like, oh my gosh, and you can feel the relief, because you know what the meaning of everything. It's very meaningful, and it adds a lot to the aspect of the second of the real 3-act structure of a Columbo episode, where it is the duel, where Columbo is utilizing this character of this version of himself that he's created. He plays someone who's very kind of disheveled, seems not quite with it, has very friendly conversations with the murderer, depending on which case it is. Sometimes he almost feels like he's on your side a little bit, or he plays up the bumbling detective in some a little bit more than others, and he puts on this persona to put them at ease and slowly dig into and unravel the mystery. And you can see the murderer figure out, as the episode goes on, how much Columbo has been playing them and how he really is this genius. He's not what you expected when you first met him. And they use a great sense of humor to play that up as well in some of my favorite episodes. I'll talk a little bit about that when we get to those. But Columbo, again, it's a great series the whole way through. I've seen most episodes throughout the series over the years. I started watching it because my dad would watch it on TV, and lots of reruns and things over time. And for me, again, of course, keeping the collection, what I would rewatch, not anything just take up space. And for me, that is seasons 1 through 4. So I have this box set here. This is from the Columbo Complete Series DVD collection. And then Japan got this in like a cigar box, this Blu-ray collection, very similar, and they came in 2 different sections. And for me, seasons 1 through 4 are where everything creatively was firing on all cylinders. Every season has, like, I don't think there's a single season, even the later ones, that is all bad. I think every season has good episodes in it. But as far as the ones that have the most home run hits for my personal taste, and the ones that I would rewatch over and over again, because remember, each episode is basically its own movie. The first 4 seasons are what I have come back to and what I will always come back to. So that's why I have this set here of seasons 1 through 4, because that is what I think of when I think of Columbo. Those are the episodes that come to mind, and those are the ones that I have and will continue to rewatch. And then, as you can see here, what I had up front, for me, the first season of Columbo is my favorite season of any detective type show ever that I've ever seen. Anything, doesn't matter whether it's from the 50s or from today, I've never seen a singular season of a show of this form that I like more than season 1 of Columbo. For me, there's not a single episode in this season that I dislike. I think they're all great. I'd say roughly half my favorites from the entire series are in this season. It's just, something about it is fantastic. I love it. And it's actually not the first season that I saw, because you'd think, season 1 is my personal favorite, probably very, nostalgically, that first experience is the best. But it's actually, aside from a few random episodes I saw on TV, this is maybe only the 3rd season, I'd say, that I've seen in completion, start to finish, in watching it over the years. But this just, for me, this is the season that has the most meaning for me, so I keep a separate DVD set for that. And then we have 2 other formats to go over. On VHS, part of the Columbia House pictures we have from season 1, Death Lends a Hand. And from season 7, we have How to Dial a Murder. Those Columbia House collectors. I have a few of those from a lot of classic series, just like a handful of favorite episodes, Bewitched, Star Trek, MASH, any of that kind of stuff, those Columbia House releases. And then from Japan, Colombo received great treatment in Japan in particular. In the days of Laserdisc, it was released on Laserdisc the majority of the original run, if not the whole thing. I can't remember off the top of my head, but I know at least the first 4 seasons, maybe even full 7, were released in Japan on Laserdisc in box sets. And we never got any of those over here. And then in Japan, they released it on Laserdisc with a bunch of different 2-episode individual sets, and then a giant, like for mega fans, box set of the whole thing on Blu-ray in like a cigar box. Like, that is the perfect thing for mega fans. If you are a huge fan of the show, you probably have that set. But I picked out a few of the individual releases with some of my favorite episodes. I picked out, first of all, this set here, which has the 2 premieres, the 2 pilots. It has Prescription Murder and Ransom for a Dead Man. And I really wanted these because those 2 stand out as something feeling a little different. Columbo changed a little bit over the course of 20-something years, however long it was that the character was portrayed. It became a little more bumbling towards the end. It was like the first 4 or 5 seasons of Columbo with a little bit of Inspector Clouseau shoved in towards the end. The little more hard edge, the little more aggressive Columbo of the early seasons is what I definitely prefer. But these 2 in particular have a slightly different portrayal, because the character, the vision of the character that we have really wasn't solidified until after these 2. These 2 were filmed well before the rest of the series. The first one was a couple of years before, and they have a slightly different take on the character. The first one in particular, Columbo is far less disheveled. He is a little more openly aggressive. He's not quite as evasive. He's not quite as sort of underhanded in how he slips in information and gathers information by the friendly persona, the telling, stories about, this is interesting. Can you tell me more about that? Because, my wife would love that. and that sort of thing. It was a little different portrayal, and the next one also had a very stylized way of shooting the episode that is very of its time and feels a little different than the rest of the series. So that's why I really like those, because those are big standouts that have such a different feel. They're really enjoyable and interesting to watch. Next up, this set has one episode from season 3 and one of season 4. Got the focus here. We have A Friend Indeed and An Exercise in Fatality, and these two I wanted to get this collection because A Friend Indeed is interesting in that it is someone that Colombo knows and trusts in the form of the police commissioner, who is his target, and it has one of the most famous reveals in that like rundown little dingy apartment and things towards the end. And it just any of these ones that have a little more of a personal emotional attachment for Colombo really kind of hit the mark. Even the one where he had one of his biggest outbursts is the one where Leonard Nimoy is playing a doctor. Like that, there are a lot of good ones like that where when he feels frustrated or more or less detached from the actual proceedings and it gets a little more emotional, those really work well. And An Exercise in Fatality is one of my favorites because it's the first episode I ever watched. The first episode, at least that I recall ever seeing on TV, and then season 4, the one that is the first episode from, is the first season I ever watched in completion. It's the first season I ever owned on DVD. I used to own like the original, the box sets here before getting this 1-to-4 set of the early seasons, and so that really sticks out in my mind just because, it might not be one of the best episodes in general, but for me personally, just that memory of that's the first one that I really remember watching and grasping the format, not being like a little kid and enjoying. So that is why I wanted that. And the last one, we have 2 more episodes here. By Dawn's Early Light, which is a pretty good episode. It's not one of my absolute favorites, but it's enjoyable. The main reason why I wanted this was Negative Reaction with Dick Van Dyke. Dick Van Dyke is one of my favorite actors ever. Definitely like a top 10 actor for me. I just really enjoy him. Those national treasure type people. Be so sad when he passes away, but who knows, he might live longer than me, to 140 or something the way he's going. But not only that, but Negative Reaction is one of my favorite, if not maybe my favorite episode of the entire show, because I think it is, for me, the perfect balance of what I like about Columbo. There are some episodes that go a little bit edgier, or a little bit more, again, like some where Columbo gets a little more angry, it's a little more enraging what is happening, a little more frustrating, and or maybe the crime's a little bit darker, or something's a little more menacing about the murderer in the case. And there are other ones that are a little more on the comedic side, but this one for me puts those two together really, really well in a perfect balance, and also has a little bit of the element that's introduced by seeing the motive of the murder and seeing the murder up front and seeing everything, to where you can understand and at times relate to why the murderer did what they did. Sometimes they're just straight up evil, but other times it's like what they did was wrong. You would never have done it, but you can kind of understand why. Like there's a little bit of something there to where you feel a little more for the character, even though you wanted them to get caught. You want them to be punished because what they did was wrong, but you understand the motivations, and like it's a little more interesting. It really makes you enjoy the character better, and Dick Van Dyke does an incredible portrayal of that element, and I just love the way the whole episode works, and it has a great balance of everything in it. The detecting is fantastic, and the big reveal is always very important in a Columbo. One more thing, and just that moment is very important. The back and forth, the duel between the two main characters, between the murderer and between Columbo, is always very important and done really well here. And the other thing too, again, is the humor, and this one has some really, really funny moments, like Columbo being mistaken for a homeless person at a soup kitchen by a nun, and it's just really, really funny. So that, to me, it will always be one of, if not my favorite episode of the entire show, just because it has such a great combination of everything that I enjoy, and I really enjoy Dick Van Dyke, and he's one of many great on this show. But just that episode for me came together to be, when I think of what a Columbo episode is, that's what I think of first. So that is my favorite episode. Alright, so that is my collection of Columbo, my favorite TV detective, amazing performances throughout the years, and again, those first 4 seasons for me are really what hit home, and those are the ones that I will rewatch as I get older and older, and a few of those absolute favorites. So I'd love to hear if you are also a big fan of Columbo, and if you're not, definitely go ahead and check it out. Find it. It's really a fascinating series, something a little different. And if you have your own collection for this show, I would love to hear, maybe show me a video if you have that, or what some of your favorite episodes are, because everyone is going to have completely different favorites, I think, because there's so many amazing ones, particularly in that original run.